Hi everyone, Sergio here. This is our lecture on ethics. Just a comment, if you see that sometimes my eyes seem to be looking up, like thoughtfully trying to figure out the answer to something, is because my notes are right behind the screen. So if you see me looking up, it's I'm looking at my notes at any moment. So at the School of Consciousness Medicine, we put a lot of importance in ethics. I will refer to some of the basic concepts that you'll find in your binder. And after that, I'll go deeper into some of these concepts. But before I even start, I want to ask you some questions. And I invite you to actually take the time to pause the video and write your answers, either in your notebook, in a piece of paper, or even in your computer. But it is important that you actually take the time to write these answers. And then in 6 months, when you're 6 months, 2 years, when you're ending the program, or 10 years from now, you can go back and check what you thought back then about ethics, about your values, about the importance of being respectful and decent when you work with expanded state of consciousness. So a few questions. I won't give the answers. We'll talk about some of them later, obviously, but just the questions. So feel free to pause this. I won't make long pauses, so feel free to pause to write your answers. So first question, why are you here? Why do you want to become a guide? Okay. Next question, why do people look our services as guides? Why would you say that people come to us, will come to you as a guide? Okay, next question. What would you say is the purpose of this work? What is the purpose of our work? Next question, and perhaps this is a question that you've been asked before. What does it mean to be a guide? You are here presumably because you want to learn how to work with expanded state of consciousness. So what does that mean? Next question, and now moving a little bit more into focus. What would you say are the duties and obligations of being a guide? There is the old Spider-Man quote, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And another famous phrase is, to whom much is entrusted, much more will be required. So, what are our duties and responsibilities towards our clients, towards ourselves, and towards the community? And finally, last question. And again, these seem obvious questions, but I do want you to take some time and write down answers if you may. Why are ethics important? Why are ethics important? Okay, thank you. So let's move on and talk a little bit about what we believe. As the School of Consciousness Medicine, we believe that the expanded state of consciousness are important in order to live better lives. And we live better lives to learning more and more about who we are. Who we are, that gives us empowerment, that gives us better understanding, that gives us choices, the possibility to choose what we want to do and how we want to live your life. And in many ways, our role is very similar to that of a psychotherapist. I will be teaching you clinical skills because clinical skills are important. Our model is centered. This, I don't think that would be an exaggeration to say that one of the pillars of our model are precisely clinical skills. And just like therapies, as you know, psychotherapists have a bunch of legal and ethical guidelines that they need to fulfill. We also have guidelines to fulfill. Our profession, if you may, is not as well clearly defined as that of a psychotherapist or a coach, even, although coaches are not even as guided as defined as psychotherapists. Because our role includes, and this again, I'm just referring to to your binders, includes the roles that sometimes are more of a coach. So with therapists, with coaches, sometimes we're mentors. Sometimes we are doing works more similar to shamanic healing and guiding. Sometimes we're doing spiritual guiding and counseling. And our work also involves ritual components to it. So it's a very complex role, and again, because with great power comes great responsibility, and guides have power. We'll talk a little bit more about that power over their clients, and if we are not aware of it, we can end up harming people, and we have to be very, very sensitive and being willing to take that on as a responsibility and take it seriously. So in the binder, you find that some of the qualities of a guide are being is curiosity and integrity and courage and surrender. And then there's a list of qualities: honesty, humbleness, ethical, self-inquiry, and so forth. I'll go through some of these, but I invite you to read them because they're important that you familiarize with them. And again, going back to the question, why are ethics important? Because again, because we have some power, and because we need to create a safe environment. For people to grow, they need to trust us. And for them to trust us, they need to know that we are decent and we're going to set boundaries. Are we going to observe those boundaries? People in an expanded state of consciousness are more vulnerable. And if they think that they need to be protected against us, closed down against us, they're not going to really do the work. So we need to be willing to share with them the importance of opening up. And again, trust is something that you earn through your behavior and actions, and being there and being solid is not something that you can tell someone, yeah, you trust me, I'll do fine, I'll take care of you. Yeah, you can say that, but probably that has happened to you. When somebody tells you trust me, there's a part of you that goes, I don't know about that. So more than the words is in your actions and in what is inside you. That's what really what really counts. It is important that you do your own work. And again, I'll say more about this. It is important that you keep in mind the client's best interests, that you are focused on healing. This is a service, that you are aware of your limitations, of your challenges, that when you make mistakes, and trust me, you will make mistakes. That is not of if, you will make mistakes. And it's important that you remain conscious of that situation, humble of that situation, and to do whatever it takes to repair those mistakes. This is important that you are the one that does that. Respect boundaries, including sexual boundaries, obviously. Respect the client's autonomy. Be mindful of their relationship. Um, what else? Be clear of the work that you're doing. So again, I was just running through some of the basics from the guideline. Now let me go a little deeper. There is a handout that comes with this lecture, and I will be sending you that handout, or you will receive that handout so you can read. Basically, it's not notes from the class. You'll need to take your own notes. It's more in terms of what some examples of codes of ethics of somewhat similar organizations than ours that might be able to give you some ideas. Okay, so let's go deeper into some of these concepts, right? And as I said, the first one is remember that your clients are putting their trust in you. They are trusting you. And as I said, those entrusted with much will be asked for much. So, first and foremost, do your own inner work. Know what are your limitations, know your triggers, know your wounds, your hooks. Where is more probable to get hooked? Do you tend to like people to admire you? Clients will admire you. Clients will put you in a pedestal. Oh, the shaman, the healer, the wise one. If you fall for that, yeah, well, that's dangerous. You need to be mindful of that. If you want to be acknowledged, you will be pulling for acknowledgement, for validation from your clients. If you feel sexually attracted to your client, you are a danger of doing that. It is important that we know all of those places, our growing edges. That's why it's important, and you are required to be in supervision and have a peer of people supporting you, so you don't make mistakes. So know thyself. Understand what moves you to do this work. What is that motivates you to do this work? Ego is a part of who we are. It's probably unreasonable to say that you will do this in an egoless fashion. We all have egos. Ego is not a bad thing. Ego is something for us to learn. As many spiritual masters have said, Ego is a great servant, but an awful master. So don't let yourself be ruled by your ego. Understand that it's there, but be aware of it. Be aware of the power dynamics. They are coming to you. You are the guide. You are the expert, and that put them in a one down position. So be aware of that. Do this in a spirit of service. I said again. I'm just repeating and going deeper into some of these ideas. Uh, why are you doing this work? The question that I asked you before. Are you? Hopefully, the answer includes somewhere there service, service to this expanded state of service to consciousness, service to your clients, service to humanity, service to Gaia, the world. I don't know. Find what is the reason. You are probably expected to be paid for this. But if your answer is you're doing this for profit, probably you need to do extra work because that is not the best energy to do this type of work. Be mindful of differences and be tolerant of different and respectful of difference. You're going to find all sort of people in doing this work, different races, different sexual orientations, different cultures, nationality, political persuasion, religion. All of that is going to come up, and it's important that you are willing to acknowledge that and work with that. Be mindful of your impact in the client. You have to learn the difference between intent and impact. This is an important difference. Sometimes we say things with the best of intention and we harm the clients, we hurt clients because we are not aware that the client is sensitive in that particular area. We may make a joke and the client doesn't get it, or we make an intervention with the best of intentions and it hurts the client. So we have to understand that my intention is different from the impact of my behavior. I know the intention of the words that come out of my mouth. I have no knowledge of how they're going to impact you. So when our words, our actions don't impact the client in a way that they let us know that is hurtful, harmful, you accept that, you acknowledge it, and you try to make reparation. You try to accept that that is the case. Own your own boundaries, respect the client boundaries as well. Create boundaries. It's important that you let your client knows what are the boundaries of your of your service, of your the service that you're providing with them. uh, Make sure, remember that the client, when expanded state of consciousness, are powerful, but there are also situations where people can be subject to manipulation, suggestion, and exploitation. So it's very important that you are aware where you're coming from and what is the impact of what you say or what you do, and so on. Almost needless to say, and I feel like I want to say this all the time, almost needless to say, because if you make it to this training, I'm assuming that you already care, that you are already a decent person. But things happen, and it's better to say it more than once for you to hear them than to say, oh well, I nobody ever told me that. Right? So that's why I'm saying these things that perhaps sound a little obvious to you. But avoid taking advantage of your client. Emotional, physiological or physical, sexual or financial advantage of the client. Your client, again, they're going to be willing to do a lot of what you say. That goes back to this idea of the power. And it's up to you can, without infantilizing clients, in an expanded state of consciousness, in many ways, not in all ways, but in many ways, uh, clients are like children. So imagine yourself as a babysitter for their inner child. You have to care for it. You have to protect it. You have to hold it. Um, Obviously, confidentiality. The work that we do as that of a therapist or a coach has to be confidential. That is important. Screen your clients. Don't work with anyone just because they come into and knocking at your door. You have to do the proper due diligence. You have to make an intake. You have to ask them about their previous life. You have to assess for risk, medical risk, physical risk, post trauma. We'll talk a lot more about that, but that's part of your ethical, is you do your due diligence. Know the person who you're working with. Talk with them, meet with them, get to know them, get to know what would be difficult, what would be challenging. Informed consent, just like in other professions, you let them know What is your philosophy? What is the work that you do? What can they expect? Why? What is not reasonable for them to expect? I'm just going to do this and I'm going to heal everything in my life. That's not reasonable. And it's important for you to let them know so they come with a clear understanding of what's going to happen. What else there? Expectations, interventions. If you work somatically, you have to let them know ahead of time that you may work with your body and obviously get their consent. If you work with energy, if you work with any other specific techniques that you use, it is important that you let them know and you obtain consent of that work. Your clients, as I said, may go into vulnerable places and may stay in vulnerable places. Don't abandon your client. Your job is beyond the session itself, and you have to be willing to extend yourself and become available as your client needs you. Another one, work only where you feel competent. We talked about humbleness before. This means that you need to accept that sometimes you may not be the best person to work with a client, and you'll refer him, her, they to someone else, and that's absolutely fine. That's part of the humbleness to say, you know what, I may not be the best person to work with you. Of course, you're always going to be a student of the work. You're going to keep working and you're going to keep learning from the work, but don't think that you have the obligation to work with everyone. Be humble enough to say, probably I'm not the best person to work with you. No, again, go to your triggers. If this person is triggering you, if the situation is triggering or wounding or too close to home, it's better to let the client know. And understand that clients are also our teachers and they will teach us stuff and we need to learn from them as we learn from the expanded states, and we keep learning new, adding new skills, keep having supervisors, keep having a consulting group for you to learn how to do the work that you're doing, and keep working with it. Self-care, interestingly, this is part of an ethical obligation. Take care of yourself. You strive to be a living example of the work. That's a nice way. And I say strive because we can never achieve an ideal. That's the whole idea of an ideal is this not achievable, right? But you can move closer to that ideal and use that ideal as a guideline of what you can become, of what you can be. Mm, Last but not least, well, a couple of things more. Be compassionate to yourself. Ethics is a guideline that we you are expected to follow. You are expected to behave ethically and compassionate at all times. But as I said before, you will make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, be compassionate to yourself and accept your mistake. It's allowed to make mistakes. What is not allowed is not to learn from your mistakes. So when you fall, learn something on your way back up. We have a community. When you make mistakes, reach out to your community. When you know that one of your peers is making mistakes, reach out to them. When I have made mistakes, it was my peers the ones that reach out to me and tell me, hey Sergio, we're worried about this. And then I reach to my mentor or other members of the community, say, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? In a position of compassion, your community will hold you and will support you. And when you know of someone of the community that made a mistakes, don't be judgmental, because you know what? Tomorrow it may be you, the one that makes this mistake. So instead of judging the other, don't waste your time judging. Try to understand and try to support and try to help healing. We make mistakes because we have stumbled into areas where we still need healing. And the mistake is the opportunity to learn from that. And learn you will. Believe me on that. Two last things before we end. Let me give you an acronym. People love acronyms, and there's an acronym that is called ETHIC, the Ethic Decision Model. ETHIC, ETHIC, which each word, let me go with each word. Examine, E, think, T, hypothesize, H, identify, and consult. Examine. Examine the situation and the circumstances surrounding it. What's going on here? What are the different aspects from diversity, from clinical, from medical, all the aspects? Examine what's happened in the situation. Think about it. If needed, ask. Mhm. But I move it ahead of time. Think about it. Then, based on what you examined and you thought, come up with a hypothesis. What are the potential consequences of this behavior? What could happen? And if you did something, what did happen? Come up with hypotheses. Identify those potential consequences, identify those risks, and finally reach out. Again, reach out, consultation, your mentor, teachers, other guides, your community, and always ask for support. Okay? So that's about it. And let me finish with a prayer. This prayer is from the Dalai Lama, and it's not specifically for guides, but I think it should be or could be, just as the St. Francis prayer is can be a prayer. Make me a channel of your peace, maybe a channel of your love. I think this prayer by the Dalai Lama is beautiful, and I think it clearly applies to the work that we do. So let me do that. May I become, at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those with no light, a place for refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. Thank you very much and see you soon.